Okay. Hi, Carmen. How are you?
Hi, Douglas. I am well, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. It's nice to have you here.
Aren't we polite? We just seem so very civil.
Well, we like to keep it that way. This show was founded on the idea of we don't want to do toxic political rant. That
Oh,
was
bless you.
because there's so much of that going on. And I said, let's just do something that's not controversial. We're not going to get into heavy political topics. And those are the only guests that I refuse to have on the show, are ones that want to wave their Trump flag or wave their Biden flag. I don't want it.
I am delighted to hear that
So,
because what I love are stories and children's stories in particular. So I'd love to talk about that and have you ask me questions. We talked about that earlier. I'll try and just field them. I don't necessarily know what's coming, and that should make it fun.
okay, well, according to your bio, you've written 12 children's books?
15.
15.
15. That
Okay.
might be an old bio.
And the one we're going to be talking about today has a very cute title, Carina Felina. I think that's great.
It's a fun, I love it when words sound musical. Children love that too. And there's something about Carina Felina, that's the Spanish
Okay.
pronunciation, but Carina Felina in English is perfectly fine. And the illustrator, Henry Cole, outdid himself with just really colorful, vivid, wild illustrations. So
Well,
I'm excited about
okay,
it.
so you said 15. How long has it taken you? Or I should ask, when was the first one published?
My first book was published in 91. I've been writing a long time.
Oh,
I have
okay.
great oldness.
Also says on your bio that you were born in Havana, Cuba, and you came to the United States as a child. You want to tell us what year that was?
Of course, I was born in. Oh, listen, I work with children. The first thing they want to know is, so how old are you? And their teachers just cringe, and they start to lunge. If you're going to work with kids, they're going to know. I was born in 1960, September 11th, 1960. And we came to the U.S. We entered the U.S. in February of 64. I was 3. I came with my father and mother. We were refugees. We came under the JFK Cuban Refugee Act of 1963.
So this was the whole Bay of Pigs Castro
Well, this was
revolution.
64. Yeah, when we came was February. That's when our papers came. Yeah, the revolution was in 59.
Okay.
So it was several years into that.
Have you been back to Cuba since?
I have gone once to but not to Cuba proper. During the Obama administration, I went through the Department of Ed we have a naval base in Guantanamo, not the detention center. This is the naval base. And I went to the school there and I told stories to the children, K through 12th grade. And then I got to tell stories to all the soldiers, sort of a USO thing. It
Oh,
was
that's great.
so wonderful. It was wonderful.
Uh,
It
you've
was
done
great seeing the.
you've done quite a bit of that, right? Do you do sort of tours with your books? Yeah.
Well, you do some with your books. It's just coming back now since the pandemic. So there was a kibosh on that for a while. But what I really do is I'm an author. I'm a children's author, and I visit schools. So I go to 100 to say 125 or 130 schools a year, and I see, I could see 6,000 children in one week. Um, if you don't like children, then you probably have broken out in hives. But if you do like them, and I do, all of the whole gamut, the adorable ones and the rotten, stinky ones, I love those too. Then it's just the best job. I love what I do,
It looks
and I
like.
tell kids, what?
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
said it looks like the age range for this is maybe kindergarten, first, second grade. Are you in that? Yeah.
Yes, I would say it's K2 or possibly K3 because third grade is the second and third, but really more into third where they are taking intuitive leaps. That's a third grade skill. And they also really love language play. Whether it's a cumulative story like this one that builds on itself, you keep adding one more line to all the characters that are being gobbled up. Well, I don't want to give the story away completely yet.
Well, no, we want people to buy the book. We just
No,
want
I
to.
want to talk about it. I'll tell you a little.
Well,
You asked me the questions.
yeah,
I'll
we'll
tell you.
talk a little bit about it, but I don't want. I want to do more like a movie trailer, rather
All
than
right.
don't want spoilers, if there is such a
Okay.
thing in a children's book. But
There is in this
yeah,
one. There is a spoiler. So I would not tell you the end, but I'm
okay,
happy to tell you a synopsis.
all right. Well, I did want to ask if you wrote the books in English or Spanish, or are they published in both? Or
They're published in both languages. I write them in English. I work with the translator. I do speak Spanish. I do read and write in Spanish, but I would never trust myself to do the kind of academic translation that we want for a children's book, for a published work. I'm honest about that. I was 3 when I came, so I speak fluent Spanish because we spoke it at home. In fact, with my mom, it was something like, "Hey, mommy, can I go?" "Oh, excuse me, someone is talking to me. But they're speaking the English and I don't understand. Ni papa lo que me estás diciendo, niña." And so she wouldn't answer us. And that's how I learned Spanish. Reading Spanish, that came from my father, who gave me many books. And I grew up with children's books in Spanish as well. La Edad de Oro, The Age of Gold, which is an iconic children's book in Cuba from, I think, the 40s, 30s.
okay, well, what I always found fascinating with bilingual families was that if the kids were born in America or came to America as young kids, but they still spoke the old country language in the house, there would be this funny conversation in 2 languages, because I can remember a friend of mine who grew up in a family that his parents came from Italy and they spoke no English or very little. And he spoke perfectly fluent English. And his mother would speak to him in Italian and he would answer in English. So when I was over at the house, I would get half the conversation.
You would get half a conversation. How fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, every family navigates this differently, every immigrant family. And I have seen and heard of and also experienced this before. In our family, my mother simply would not, she would pretend she couldn't understand you. I knew she could understand me, but I had to answer in Spanish. The other interesting thing that happens also, though, is that those children, and perhaps there's that way with your friend, become the bridge, the segue between one culture and another. So I went to the bank with my mother. I went to the grocery store with my mother. If there were papers that needed to be signed for anything, you were the translator,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is, and my sister as well, not just me. I have a sister.
Well, it was
She was
interesting
great.
because he could both languages would run simultaneously in his head. And I don't think there was a distinction between the two. So
Not at first.
yeah, they make perfect translators. Absolutely. Let's hit on your book a little bit here, Carina Felina. I'm guessing this is about a cat.
Oh, and dead on.
Yeah.
Carina Felina, and I'll tilt her a little bit so you can see her. Isn't she marvelous? This blue
Yes. Oh,
cat.
great.
I placed it in Havana, although the story is told in many countries around the world. And my father told a version of it to me as a child, and I have written my own version that includes sort of a little phrase that she says, just so that children would have something to learn and repeat. And it's about a parrot who falls absolutely beak over claws in love with una gatita, a cat. Now, as soon as you say that, see, you already snickered, right? As
Yeah.
soon as you say that to the children, they're immediately shouting to you, "No, that's a terrible idea." And I said, "Well, you know that's a bad idea, and I know that's a bad idea." But no one was there to tell the parrot. And so the parrot invites her to dinner. And I'm going to pause right there because I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, and then the story you'll have to wait, and you'll have to read it. But after she's eaten all these lovely crackers that he has made, he spent all day preparing, and she has downed all the café cubano, the Cuban coffee. She turns to him like, what else is there? And he says, "You left nothing for me? Who are you?" And she says, "I'm Carina Felina. I do what I like. I eat what I wish. Now get out of my way or you'll be my next dish." And the parrot, he's well, first of all, he's stunned that this beautiful creature has turned out to be so catty. And he says, "I'm not afraid of you." And so this repeats itself throughout the story. The cat then replies, Not yet. And with a gobble and a gulp, down he went. And because Henry did such a masterful job illustrating this, you see the parrot going down her gullet and landing in her belly in a soggy heap of crackers. So you know he's okay. And then she meets the next person and the next, and they have similar interactions, always with, I'm not afraid of you, not yet. And down they go. And she always has the same little, I'm Carina Felina. It was so much fun to construct because the story is constructed. Some stories are and some aren't, but stories have structure, and you have circular structures. You start here, you go all the way around, you end up back where you started. If you give a mouse a cookie, have you read that to your kids? You know that one? You end up where you started. Yeah. Some are cumulative. You kind of add on. This is the house that Jack built. This is the hay, and so forth. Children seem to understand these constructs, and they also are aids to memory. So it helps you remember things when there's a particular structure. Those are two that I love a lot. But anyway, I didn't mean to get off on that and start talking about story structure. But in this book, it was so much fun to go through all the characters. And then in the end, there is a twist. And I don't want the children to worry who are watching or may read the book, because as she gobbles up one character after another, it's meant to be playful, and the illustrations are so fun. But everything is going to be fine in the end. It's all they have to remember. Even for that ravenous meow cat.
So do all your books have a message and a happy ending?
Good question. Two good questions. If they have a message, I try to not be a didact, to beat them over the head with a lesson. I hope it works. I hope that the subtlety is there. Stories are supposed to teach us something about the world and the people in it and how to be good humans. Not propaganda, not trying to be preachy, I suppose, but to teach us some fundamental things about how to treat one another, how to treat things that are weaker and things that are bigger, and how to get out of trouble when you're in it. Your second question.
Happy ending.
Happy endings, yes. They always have a resolution that can send a child being read that book at bedtime into a comfortable, I suppose, gentle and happy slumber.
Oh, that's nice.
It's meant to be not cloyingly sweet or anything, but the point for children, I think, all right, so my own childhood was a difficult one, and I'm grateful for all the things actually I went through, because those things take you to a certain place. But books for me and stories for me, Douglas, were a sanctuary. They were a place to hide. They were a place to go and escape everything. School was no fun, I'll tell you that. I was a second language speaker with dyslexia that was undiagnosed for decades. So even though reading was difficult, I could plod through, and I always had great storytellers. So when it was time to write stories of my own, and I'm not sure how that happened other than I just loved them, and I got lucky. Someone liked the first one, and then it took off. I wanted them to be stories not that were believable. Sometimes the characters are cranky. Sometimes the characters are not always lovable. But the main character, the protagonist, has to get through the story, through the trouble, to the end, and somehow safe again. Children need that. The world is a scary place for our children.
Yeah,
not just now. 1,000 years ago. We're meant to give them places to go where they can rest from all their worries. They have them too.
Well, I think on that, we're going to have to wind this down. Thank you so much for coming on. My guest is Carmen Agra Deedy. The book is called Carina Felina. There we go. And the book is out now, yeah?
It is.
Okay.
It is. And I hope they love it.
Last question. Do you have a website you want to give out?
I do. It's just my name. If you see the name on the book, you can find it. CarmenAgraDeedy.com. You can also go on Facebook. I'm always putting fun things up for adults and children about writing and about stories and about great books that I find. Not mine necessarily, but wonderful books. So,
okay.
Carmen Agra Deedy. Thank you.
Well, this was a pleasure.
You,
Thank you so much for coming on, and best of luck with your book.
Muchas gracias.